Hello and welcome to another edition of Fide's podcast. My name is Jerry Serino and I'm your host, and I'm here with talent on loan from Rush. I have been a huge admirer of Turning Point USA. I have had a number of people from Turning Point, great organization doing great work on our university campuses, but really all over. I highly suggest any of you get involved in Turning Point if you are not already. I've done some talks at Turning Points here in the greater Cleveland area. Happy to do it. And my guest today is someone that I've actually, seen doing some really great stuff out there on social media. Chrissy Clark is a reporter. She's a journalist, and she's also recently newly a contributor now for Turning Point USA. So welcome, Chrissy.
Thanks so much for having me, Jerry. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I love talking to fellow conservatives and people that are out there being outspoken and really getting the word out. And I think you're doing really great stuff in that regards. Being a journalist this day and age as a conservative is you're a huge minority. But I'm curious
Yeah,
to
you're
know a
telling
little
me.
bit. Yeah, for real. But you're persevering. You're out there doing it, and it is so important because there's so much misinformation and censorship and the like. But my audience is always interested in knowing my guests' background, a little bit about them. Your upbringing, a little bit where you're from, and then I would love to know what got you involved in the conservative movement.
Yeah. So I guess my story really started with dance. So all through high school, middle school, I was really into dance and I thought I was going to not go to college. I was going to go and become a professional dancer in LA, and that was my goal when I was 16, 17, 18 years old. And very soon I realized, after a slew of incidents with injuries and whatnot, that it probably wasn't in the realm. And so my parents were big advocates of sending me to college. And so I merely applied to like a couple of colleges that sounded fun to me, and I decided I was just going to go all in on this college thing. And I got to college and I quickly realized this thing was a scam. In full transparency, my mom at the time had just lost her mom. So we just lost my grandma. And so I was going into school and I'm like, I have no idea what I want to put. Dance wasn't an option because I wasn't like a classically trained ballerina. So that was not an option. Like, I wasn't going to be on the sidelines with my pom poms. Not a thing, at least for me. So my mom had gone and seen this futurist, I guess, that said I was going to be on TV. That was going to be my job when I grew up. And so I said, okay, well, I have no prospects. I have no idea what in the world I want to do with my life. So I guess I'll just do this TV thing. So I went into journalism. And for anybody that's been in the journalism school, 5 seconds in, I realized this is a scam. I don't want to do this. Real journalism is actually nothing like what they're teaching you on college campuses. So I changed my degree to some sort of like statistics program so I could learn about how to read polls, how to read numbers, so I could go on TV and talk about something that's actually knowledgeable and worthwhile. Now, that's not exactly how my life panned out. I now talk about crazy transgender stories on
Yeah.
TV, but you know what? It was a means to ends. So I really got involved with Turning Point. Actually, was my very first intro into conservatism. My parents had always been definitely right of center. My mom a lot more than my dad, but she had told us, she's a diehard Republican. And so I really wanted to understand like the fundamentals behind how she got to that point of view. And Turning Point really helped me understand that, because I didn't want to just follow along with what my parents were doing. I wanted to make sure I could learn and create my own opinions on my own. And luckily, we are all of the same opinion, but I had to come to that conclusion for myself. And I think that's healthy. Our parents
Mhm.
want us to learn how to think, not what to think. So that was very
Yeah.
helpful. So went and I started going to Turning Points conferences. I believe I was 19 years old, so that would have been 2017. I started going into Turning Point conferences. It was so much fun. This is back when it was like 200, 300 people in West Palm Beach, a lot scaled back, a lot more small. And I had a blast doing it. I met some really awesome people that helped me kind of catapult myself into this conservative era. But I knew I wanted to be somewhat of a journalist with it. So I was like, okay, I will go. I'm going to do this turning point thing, and then it's going to help catapult me to DC. And at the time, I really wanted to be in DC, Jerry. Crazy delusional kid I was. So I went and got an internship over at the Heritage Foundation. I had to do the spring semester because I'll just be honest. God creates us all differently, and He didn't create me as His brightest bulb. So I could not master getting into the summer internship program. So I went in the spring when there's plenty of openings, plenty of room for people like myself. And I had a blast. I met some great people. I met mentors that I still have to this very day. And I was really grateful for what I learned there and how to really get good at the craft of journalism. So through that, I had a mentor program, which I highly recommend. Oh my gosh, if you are younger, if you're in your college years, get yourself a mentor. They're the best. They can help you navigate the world that you're living in because you think you know all the answers. I promise you, you don't. So it's really helpful to have somebody to bring you along the way. And that's exactly what my mentor did for me. She put me in touch with someone over at the Federalist. Federalist is a great place. I had a blast working there. And that's really where I got my foray into journalism.
So, journalism is obviously big for you, and as I mentioned, it's being a conservative, it's you're a minority. What was it about? So I have 3 kids in college, and there's so much about college that frustrates us as
Mm-hmm.
parents, and as we see our kids going through. It's so frustrating that it could be a source of something very, very good. And instead, it's very frustrating. But you saw that it was a scam. You said you went into journalism school and you saw it was a scam. What about it? What did you see that made you say that's a scam? And then consequently, when you went out in the real world and had a mentor and gained experiences, what did you see was the real journalism?
Yeah, well, I want to say that I don't regret my 4 years because I made choices that I thought were financially sound. So I wasn't going to some school where I couldn't afford it or
Yeah.
I didn't have tuition. I wasn't making that kind of decision. So I look back at my college years very fondly and very glad I grew up not with my reputation out for the world making dumb decisions at 18. It was confined to a bubble in Michigan. And I'm very happy I did it. So it's not to negate that going to college for the right thing isn't uh, you know,
Mhm.
a bad idea. But I'm just very against it as we use it to basically tell kids you're going to go to college and it's going to leave you with a high paying job. And there's no high paying jobs out there because our market, our economy says, oh, the good jobs are out there. There's so many jobs. No, no, no. They're low paying jobs. You have to be in some sort of side hustle. The high paying jobs, you need like 5 to 6 years of experience. College is not the experience. Okay. You have to go out, get internships, do all these things. It is not as easy as it's sold. That's why I think college is a scam. So if you're going for a hard science, you're going for to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer, great. I'm all for you going to college. I just don't think we should tell people if you want to get a good comms job, you must go to a 4 year college. Go to a 2 year college, get a degree, and get out. Okay. That's how
Mhm.
I see it. And when I was in journalism school, which again, I learned more in my 1 year post grad than I did in 4 years learning anything along the lines of journalism. They tried to pigeonhole me into writing what you would get at a local news station. And I didn't want to be part of a local news station, right? Like I had bigger, broader dreams than that. But even what they were teaching you at a local news station, like a feature story or something, anything that I found of interest, anything that was conservative adjacent, anything along those lines, they would squash. I'm like, this is a crazy story. I would hit this headline. And they were like, no, see, that wouldn't fly. Your editors wouldn't approve that. I'm like, okay, so then I'm not in the right program for me because I'm looking at the media landscape. I see with my own eyes that there are people that pick these headlines up. So why wouldn't I be able to do that? And it's because I started to notice the bias. So that's when I actually got involved in Campus Reform, which is also another
Mhm.
great program for college kids. And it teaches you how to do journalism. So I ended up learning more through College Reform or Campus Reform which again, if you don't know what that is, it's a program for student journalists to write on their college campuses. And it was great. It provided me a really awesome opportunity, I will say, because when my teachers would do or say insane things, I would just reach out to them as a student journalist and say, "Hey, I was in your class when this happened. Would you like to provide a comment?" And every single class I did that in, Jerry, I always got an A in that class. So I don't know if that was bribery, but hey, it worked.
Yeah, you called them out. Yeah, they knew that you were there, observing, properly observing.
Mm,
That's really good. So, okay, really interesting, good stuff. And I agree with everything you said. There it definitely is a role for college, and it definitely can be reformed for sure. Yeah, I agree. So, okay, I want to get into a couple things, and so one of the things that you do a lot of is you report on the what you call underreported news,
mhm.
things that are going on. So give me an idea of the a few of the underreported stories that are going on right now.
Yeah. Well, the elevator pitch for an underreported story is something that if you turn on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, including right wing outlets, you would not see it enough, right? You'd see it one time in a culture clash segment or something along those lines, but it's really not being talked about to the extent it deserves to be talked about because it affects and impacts our life to a higher degree than some of these really stupid stories they spend time talking about.
Hmm.
So, for instance, one of the stories that actually got me banned from going live on TikTok, which is so annoying, but it's this story about a Montana family. They're a mom and or a dad and stepmom. They had a 14-year-old child who alleged she was suicidal, and when she did that, Child Protective Services came over, did a home inspection, and they ended up concluding that the daughter was transgender, and the daughter now does not belong to them. Like, she is not in the custody of her own parents solely because she identified as transgender and, according to the story, allegedly faked her own suicide. It's absolutely wild. It's absolutely absurd. And these are stories that impact people, really impact people, because we're not just talking broad picture. You're not just talking about transgender issues in New York City. Okay, we hear that story like 8 times a day. I got it. I'm familiar with it. When it's happening in Montana, when it's happening in upstate New York, when it's happening in Alabama or Oklahoma, that to me goes ding, 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 red flag. These are not states that are taken away from their parents. This to me is a red flag. That is an underreported story.
Yeah, that sure is, and I think that the old journalism used to be. I remember I started off the show. I always mention Rush Limbaugh.
Mm.
He's the greatest, in my opinion, in our world of conservative communication, I guess. He used to say, "Is it in the past, or at least in the way it should be, is the journalist should see a story and they should go get to the bottom of it. They should find the truth and educate people. So if a politician is giving a speech and doing a rally, they should report on exactly what happened and let people take from it what they will." Whereas nowadays, as you well know, and we all live in, a story like that, the people on the left are unaware of. They don't even know these stories. And so that's why it's so important for people like you to get out there and report on this stuff and get it out. So are there other underreported stories that you're aware of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, every single Monday to Wednesday plus Thursdays where I put a podcast out, I give you 5 underreported stories you need to know. You can always find them at underreportedstories.substack.com. And one of the ones that I think has been really just kind of on the back of my mind is this whole woke kindergarten program. I don't know if you've heard about this, Jerry, but it's crazy. It's this
Mhm.
woman who installs programs in public schools, and the program is actually called woke kindergarten. It sounds like something I would make up or say, "Oh my gosh, this woke kindergarten program." No, no, they call themselves woke kindergarten. And there are videos that are surfacing of this woman saying that she hates America. She doesn't believe America has the right to exist, and that she hates all settler colonial people and countries, and she hates white people. And every time she says y'all, it's so funny. She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, these people are crazy." You have to listen to it to believe it, but it's a real problem. And This is really what kids are learning. They're learning about liberating the pro black, trans, queer, I don't even know, something LGBT alphabet, right? They're always doing this stuff. They're always pushing this on young and impressionable kids, and it's incredibly problematic that this is happening in our public schools. This is what kids are learning as fact. This is opinion being taught as fact. And you know what? I don't care if it's in the San Francisco Bay Area where probably the kids' parents are on board with this. That's not what we want out of kids. We want them to be able to test positively on math scores, and you're not going to get good math scores when you're learning about the liberation of Black people from woke kindergarten anti-Israel.
Yeah, so it does seem like there's a trend, and as a journalist, I'm sure you're seeing this or have your fingers on the pulse of it. It seems like so much of what we're facing has to do with children, right? Whether
Yes.
it's abortion, not that abortion is new, but it certainly has been with Roe v. Wade having gone away and things going to the states, but everything with uh, transgender children, cutting off body parts of children, and drag queen story hour. It, am I wrong in seeing that so much of these sort of what I would call attacks are on children?
No, you're not wrong. I've actually been having this conversation a lot because people will typically put out this definition of woke, and they like to say it's just like something that is progressive beyond the pale, right? And I actually like I don't like that definition of woke because I think it's not nuanced enough. I think what woke is it's something that would be acceptable, maybe we would politically disagree with it, but acceptable to adults and then is perverted to children. For instance, drag queen shows. If you're above the age of 18 or 21 or whatever the limit is in your state and you want to go see a drag queen show, would I personally go see it? Probably not. But it's not problematic. It becomes woke when you pervert that and make it drag queen story hour for children. That to me is woke, right? There are
Mhm.
other examples of that, like books. There are books about essay, sexual assault, I'll say. They that's a fine book if you want to read that above the age of 18, you're in college, that's what you like to do for fun. Not saying I would do it. I'm just saying we have to let adults be adults. It's when it's put into middle school libraries at the taxpayer expense that we go, that's woke. That's weird. It's a perversion of children. And that's why I think people really have to understand what woke is to understand why it's so important to be anti woke. It's not just
Mhm.
about fighting progressive causes that you don't like. It's about fighting progressive perversion.
Mhm. Yeah, very well put. Very well put. Okay, so I want to go into some. So we're recording this on February 9th. We're going to
Mm,
release this just in a few days. So it's not sometimes there's a big lag between when I record. And so I just
yeah.
mention it because I'm saying that is because yesterday, um, the Joe Biden was it was told we were told that he's not going to be prosecuted for him having boxes um,
Yeah.
of of evidence of I'm sorry of classified documents in his garage and so on, and he's they basically said it's because he's not very competent and has a horrible memory and so on, and then it, like duh, we've known that for a long time. What do you take? What is your take, and what are you hearing about his situation?
Right. Well, one of the things that struck me as just like light bulb moment is that the staff was constantly playing this kind of cleanup game for Joe Biden where they were like, no, he's actually not mentally in decline. They were just kind of playing the defensive game. And now the Biden administration has kind of gone on the offense where they're putting out ads targeting Donald Trump for messing up things and calling Nikki Haley Nancy Pelosi. Now, I think it's fair to say, okay, yeah, Donald Trump messed that up. Or a lot of the times Donald Trump will get dinged for saying the Obama administration when he's talking about the Biden administration. I actually don't know if that's a mistake. In my opinion, I think they're one and the same. So I don't know if he's doing that on purpose or by mistake. Regardless, I understand where you can kind of understand and see where the dings are coming from. What I realize though is the Biden administration is A, aware that this is a problem, and B, know that it's so problematic to their own campaign. They're trying to like punch at Donald Trump to say, let's see if we know the American people don't like this about us. Let's see if we can get them to recognize this about our opponent. But you're realizing that it's a problem, right? Like they've now come to the table by putting that ad out.
Mhm.
They're admitting that they know that this is a problem for them. And I think that's just really where it lies is Biden, when his staff is doing no good by him. I think it was maybe it was a Politico playbook that was trying to explain this, that it was like taking Biden away from a presser where he needs to be taken away is like taking keys away from your parent. These staffers just don't feel like they can take things away from Biden, and they're doing him no good. We know from conversations on the Hill that Joe Biden is mad at staffers right now for not making Joe Biden end his pressers early because he looks like a buffoon. So we know that this is a problem behind closed doors, but the problem is that the staffers, they either A, need to buck up and do something about this if they want to win. Like if I'm a Democratic strategist, I'm just not recommending this, but I'm just putting myself in their shoes. I'm like, take him off. Take him off the stage. Sorry, Mr. President. I know that you want to do this, but I don't care if you're the most powerful man in the world. We care more about your reelection bid than we do about your feelings in the moment. And that's clearly not happening. I believe it was yesterday, February 8th, we saw Joe Biden got mad about this report, and then he wanted the presser so that he can go out and prove to people that he can have conversations. I guess didn't go very well, but he did
Mhm.
that. And we know that his feelings kind of direct what is happening in the White House, and the staffers are not up to speed on how to deal with that. And it's unfortunate. If I'm a Democrat, if I'm a Democratic staffer, I mean, I'm reading reports from behind the scenes, and these reports are saying previous Democrats and previous, not Democrats, but previous Biden aides that are still current Democrats are going, we have nothing but curse words to say. Oh, shit, this is bad for us. It's not
Mhm.
good for the Biden administration right now, and they know it.
Any
Yeah.
public speaker is going to say something wrong, like you mentioned, confusing Nancy Pelosi with Kamala Harris or something, and we all say the wrong thing. You're out there speaking, you
Yeah.
probably have caught yourself saying the wrong
All the
year
time.
or month or whatever, right? Yeah, what Joe Biden is doing is not that by any stretch of the imagination. This is he's obviously has some mental, illnesses. I mean, dementia, Alzheimer's, something. And I say that not trying to be mean. It's he needs help, and he should not be president.
No.
He shouldn't be. If you're a small business owner and he was the owner of your business, you'd ask him to step down, right? And yet he's the president. Um, so it leads me into the conversation as far as Trump is concerned, and what the left has been doing to try to get rid of him. Obviously they impeached him twice, in my opinion, over nothing. They have indicted him multiple times over the most ridiculous things imaginable, including, remember, he's dealing with a lawsuit for him having documents that were in Mar-a-Lago under lock and key, guarded by the Secret Service. Joe Biden's were in his garage. But he's being prosecuted. Do you think there's a chance that Donald Trump will end up not being able to run for president?
No, I don't think that's going to happen because the most important case, I would argue, is the case in Florida, the documents case that's happening there. And the judge that's down there understands that there are ramifications to their political ramifications, I should say, to get expediting this trial to make a political deadline. So down there, they're kind of slow rolling it. There's a lot of problems that are coming with declassifying documents because Donald Trump, he's a former president right now as we're recording this. So he doesn't even have full access to the classified documents. So that's a problem coupled with jury seating, it's going to be so long. And if I'm going to say any one case would lead Donald Trump to being prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, that's the case, and it's not happening before the election. We're aware of that. I don't actually know what would happen if he became president. Does it continue on? What presidential power does he have to stop it? I'm not sure. Everything else right now is really up to the Supreme Court. We have the court is right now deciding whether or not Donald Trump can be charged for insurrection, which is crazy that they're talking about the Colorado Supreme Court that took Donald Trump off the GOP ballot in
Mhm.
Colorado because he allegedly engaged in insurrection, even though no one has found him guilty of an insurrection except for Democrats in their language. So it's very problematic. The Supreme Court could basically, if they rule against Colorado, they would be knocking out not just Colorado's problem, they would basically be knocking off a good chunk of Fannie Willis's trial in or litigation against Trump in Georgia over the RICO statutes. Much of that would go away, as well as Jack Smith's case, Tanya Chutkin's case in DC. That is TBD, but it's very unclear what's going to happen right now with these dates. And it really does come down to the Supreme Court and whether they want to weigh in. So we'll see, but I don't see anything in my current understanding of it. I think it would be very difficult to see Donald Trump behind bars if that's your prerogative, if that's your Democrat and that's what you want to see. You are not going to see that before November 5th. I don't see that happening.
Yeah. So obviously, we know, as I mentioned, he was impeached twice over nothing.
Yeah.
They accused him of colluding with Russia, and that was completely and utterly made up. Completely made up.
Mm.
There's indicting him over the dumbest things that are absurd. His valuation of his assets in New York, with
Yeah. Sorry.
in which no one is aggrieved in any way, but that's what they're doing. Why do they hate him so much? We've never seen George Bush, Bill Clinton, Obama, anyone treated like this, especially after they were out of office. But even in office, the whole Russia collusion thing. I mean, they infiltrated his campaign, spied on him, and so on. Why do they hate him so much?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's hard to fully grasp it because yes, George Bush is a lot more quiet, mundane. When I look back at his presidency, all I can think about is Common Core, and I just want to give him the middle finger in all honesty, because Common Core is one of the worst things that's ever happened to education in America. So these people are traditionally what you would call kind of rhinos, Republicans in name only. They weren't really doing anything, pushing an
Mhm.
intense agenda. And I think that when Donald Trump goes out there and he pushes an intense agenda, he's going to get intense pushback. So Nikki Haley doesn't get intense pushback because she doesn't have any intense positions, right? She just has mundane, mediocre, through the middle. And the further you push to instill change, the more backlash you're going to get, and you could take the partisanship away from that. You see that on the left too, right? AOC wants to instill some of the most radical change, and she gets radically hit on because she's a radical moron. It's how it works. The more you attempt to change, the better you are at your jobs. In some cases, not all cases, you're going to get smacked around a little bit more. And I can't explain to you why the media hates Donald Trump so much. It's truly, the word can't be overemphasized enough. It's truly a derangement syndrome they have. It really is, because if you take it from, I like to be able to have a conversation where I'm like, these are my political opinions. This is what I think. And I get mistaken as anti-MAGA or anti-Republican on TV because I go and I do my job as a journalist and actually just tell you what the point of view through the middle is. It's not to tell you what's right or wrong. It's just to tell you to the opinion. And people are like, you're anti-MAGA. I'm like, no, I'm just telling you the middle opinion, and then we can have a conversation about my political views separately, right? But through the middle, you should be able to distill that the policies writ large that Donald Trump had are not really that ideologically right compared to how ideologically left the left is intending to go with theirs. So I think it's difficult when you have an honest conversation about it. People can hate Donald Trump's personality. I get that. But the change that he's trying to instill in the country is, yes, more radical than your traditional rhino. But in the grand scheme of things, it's far pared back in comparison to something like a progressive leftist agenda that you want to see out of AOC or any of the squad
Mhm.
members.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really good. Perfect point. So, well, that 30 minutes flew by. It was
Yeah.
you're really really good at what you do. Please
Thank you so
keep it
much.
up, and I'm scrolling for those watching. If you want to connect with Chrissy, her handle is at the Chrissy Clark. And if you could mention once again where people can find all your all your articles and everything else?
Yeah, of course. You can find me everywhere at Turning Point USA, as well as the best place to find and get underreported stories is underreportedstories.substack.com, or you can just find underreported stories wherever you get your podcasts. And we're so excited to have you there. It'll be so fun.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So yeah, please subscribe and follow Chrissy, because again, if you want real good journalism and learning about knowing about the facts and really good stories that are important for us to know, you got to follow someone like Chrissy. So Chrissy, thanks so much for coming on. It was really,
Thank
really great
you.
talking with you.
Thank you so much. Come on whenever.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely take you up on that. This was really enjoyable. So thank you so much. And thank all of you for listening to this episode of Fide's podcast. Please check out all my podcasts and all the different podcast apps on YouTube, Rumble, on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on rightamericamedia.com and on WHK radio /podcasts.com as well. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next time.